Hey Trickster Gods, we're back at this whole crafting adventure, and for the past year, lower quality models like Throg here are what I could come to expect from my 3D printer. My Ender printer does a lot of things well, but printing tiny detailed things, not so much. So I recently got an Anycubic resin printer, and suddenly I could produce amazingly small detailed things. And with this newfound power unlocked in my skill tree, I want to start resin printing everything. It knew just the place to turn to for amazingly small, detailed models. Wicked 3D are some of the best designers out there for Marvel and geeky content. I've been subscribed to their Patreon since February, and they shower their supporters with a ridiculous amount of incredibly detailed models every month. Their excitement for what they do is just contagious. And any one of their models could make for a project. But I decided to pick Croki because I love how outrageous it is, that this character exists in the first place, and he clearly deserves more screen time. So let's make a swamp battle between Alligator Loki, Frog Thor, and my proposed addition to the lore, Snake Hela. Snella? Snakella? Serpentella? Name pending. But continuing this reptile amphibian theme, I thought Hela would be best represented by a hooded cobra style snake. Croki gets a base coat in dark green and all manner of dry brushing of various shades of lighter green and yellow green. His little horned helmet gets painted separate from the body so I don't get gold on the scales or green on the helmet. That allows me to be lazy about things like painting carefully, and if I planned better ahead of time, I would have done the same exact thing for his teeth, but plan only goes so far. Throg comes to us from a Thingiverse designer, Dal DC, and is meant to be used with the Marvel Crisis Protocol game. He ends up being painted almost the opposite way of Croki, where the yellow-green accents on Croki is the base color for Throg's skin. Meanwhile, the darker green of Croki's base color will later be the tiny spots that dot Throg's skin. I add in the silver circles, some gold shin guards for when he's playing soccer, and decorate his little tiny winged hat. I'll also struggle to do his eyes properly before remembering that the whites should actually be yellow, and then I redo that process again. Technically speaking, Croki's eyes should also be yellow, but there's only so many times you can paint on a pupil before finding yourself in a whole multiverse full of madness, so we're gonna let that slide. Since Snake Hela is from my own imagination, I found a snake model that looks sinister and spiky and added the signature crown to it. Careful viewers may notice that her crown is broken, and in fact I have a whole collection worth of broken Hela crowns now. I figure I'd only keep breaking it more along the way, so after several deep breaths and calming exercises, I resolved I'd fix it later. But along the way of dry brushing green scales on, I realized that this Snake Hela idea just wasn't working for me. Mainly because the facial expressions of the model I picked didn't match Hela's personality at all. No fault of the original designer, mind you. Then I had tried a couple other snake models too, but it just was not working out. It turns out you can't just put her crown on top of any snake and it'll look like her. So none of the results were up to the standard I was going for, so Snake Hella gets added to the Island of Misfit Prints, and we carry on. In the Wicked bust, Croki has a nameplate in front, which is why his stomach appears a bit lacking here. I decide to fill that space with the Tesseract. For a glow effect, I blended together whites and blues along the edge of the cube and then used my airbrush to apply the same colors to the surrounding area. I did blue as the largest aura and progressively used lighter and lighter colors until I hit white, zeroing in on where the cube will go. That glow is my favorite part of the build, and the way the colors go around the scales just comes out magical. Inspired by this, I decided to do a similar effect on Throg for the hammer. I give a broken model a haircut to repurpose the jagged strands of hair as lightning. I glue these down everywhere I could and do a similar blue and white glow effect. I probably went too hard on adding this, because once I started I didn't want to stop. Excessive? Absolutely it was. This frame came from Goodwill, and the message that we should all just be kind is quickly forgotten under the cover of black paint. For the swamp water, I planned a resin pour, but instead of just winging it like I normally do, I decided to try measuring things for just once. I poured in the water to determine how much resin I would like, marked it off on the container, then poured in equal parts resin and hardener. Before pouring, I glued a fallen tree, some stumps, and the models down first, and then I did the politically incorrect action of filling the swamp. The darkness of the water was all part of my master plan to hide the fact that Croki doesn't have a lower half or a tail. Using a swamp mixture recipe that I found on North of the Borders for Alligator video, I mixed clear silicone with isopropyl alcohol and a bit of green to make a truly disgusting mix. I splattered that all around Croki. Around Throg, I went for a different approach, with a bunch of lily pads that were hole punched out of a colored paper, hit with a bit of green wash for variation, and then glued in. More experienced crafters might have planned this symbolic look ahead of time, that the disgusting swamp for Croki would be contrasted by the lily pads for Throg. But in my case, this accidental stroke of genius was just due to the fact that I didn't have enough swamp muck to cover the whole thing. You gotta embrace all those happy little accidents as you go. After adding a few tiny lilies that under close examination are really just crumpled up pieces of paper, we're ready to call this mastercraft complete. As always, a big thank you for checking out my craft, and a reminder that most of my video ideas come from the comments below. I make a lot of geeky builds, and I'm always trying to make something new that challenges me to grow as a crafter and have fun. If that sounds like your idea of a good time, chances are you'll like some of my other stuff too, so feel free to subscribe and follow along with this adventure. Anyways, keep your timelines separated, your variance in check, and your mischief managed, and I'll see you next time.